here we go again. All right, still eliminating because we can't do substitution. So again, cover up. We have a couple of options. Option 1, I have a 2x and I have an x. In order to get rid of these, both of them have to be the same number, but one needs to be a positive and one a negative. So since this is a 2, this is a 1, I would have to change this 1 into a negative 2 in order to be able to cancel them out. So our option 1 is multiplying this bottom one by a negative 2. Option 2, I have y and y. So both of them are the same. The only thing is that both of them are positives and one of them needs to be negative. So I can either multiply the top by a negative 1 or the bottom by negative 1. So your two options, two. I know, I need to do my nails, but we're isolated, so yay, quarantine. So two options, I can either multiply this bottom one by a negative 2, or I can multiply this bottom one by a negative 1. I like smaller numbers, so I'm going to multiply this by a negative 1. So nothing is happening to this guy, so this guy's going to stay the same. 2x plus y equals 11. However, this guy right here is going to be transforming. So negative 1 times x gives me a negative x. A negative 1 times y gives me a negative y. And a negative 1 times 6 is a negative 6. There we go. So 2x minus x is just 1x. Y and negative y cancel each other out. Don't need that. And 11 minus 6 is a 5. Now, this is 1x. So it's the same thing as just x. X equals 5. That's it. Boom, we're done. All right, I can't divide both of these. I mean, I could, but why? That doesn't make any sense. So again, all I did was that I made this bottom one, I just basically changed the signs. Instead of a positive x, it's a negative. Instead of a positive y, it's a negative. Instead of a positive 6, it's a negative 6. The top one stayed the same. So 2 minus 1 is 1. Those go away. 11 minus 6 is 5. I'm going to take this 5, and I'm going to go, wee, oh, I didn't pick which one am I going to use, the top or the bottom. Well, since this is an x, and then I look at my x's, this one I have to multiply by 2. That one's by 1. I'm going to pick this one because I don't want to have to do more work. It's way too early for that. So 5 plus y equals 6. Instead of this x, I'm going to plug in this 5, then my y, then my 6. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. And I have y, those guys go away, equals 6 minus 5 is 1. So y equals 1. And there you go. I have 5 and 1 as my solution. Okay, so we're going to do something similar for question 23. But actually, let's just do that. So let's go to 23. 23, if I cover up option 2, let's look at option 1. I have a 6x and an x. So in order to cancel these out, this 1x needs to transform into a negative 6 so that they can cancel out. So my option is to multiply the bottom by a negative 6. Option 2, I have a negative y and a negative y. Both of them are the same. So that means that one of them needs to be multiplied by a negative 1. Since this is a bigger number, I would probably multiply the bottom one by a negative 1. So differences, these were two positive answers. These are two negative answers, but we're still going to do the exact same thing because that just changes this sign, and I need this to be a positive. So nothing's happening to this first one, so it stays the same, 6x minus y equals 11. I'm going to distribute this negative 1. So negative 1 times x is a negative 1x. x. A negative 1 times negative y is a positive y. And a negative 1 times a positive 1 is a negative 1. Add them up. 6 minus 1 is a 5x. My y's cancel out. 11 minus 1 is 10. Divide both of these by 5. And I get x equals 2. So that's my 2. From here, I can choose top or bottom, which one to plug it into. The bottom one's way easier, so I'm going to take this 2. And I'm going to go wee. I'm going to plug it into that x. So instead of that x, I'm going to plug in a 2. Instead of this negative, with the negative 1, negative y equals 1. So I am going to subtract 2 from both sides. Ooh, I already see that you guys aren't going to like this one. Negative y. Do not forget that negative. You guys always forget that negative. 1 minus 2. Different signs is subtract. 2 minus 1 is a 1. Since a 2 is bigger, it's going to be a negative. This is not done. You see this negative. Do not just go, oh, let me erase it. Keep it and divide both of these by a negative 1. That makes this go away. I'm left with a positive y equals a negative and a negative gives me a positive 1. If not, you would have gotten a negative 1, and no, don't do that. So my answer, 2, 1, and boom, you're done. All right, off to the last few questions, and then we're done. Have a good one.